thematic session on the journey of refugee scientists. Over the past 5 years or 6 years, millions of people have left the Middle East and North Africa region due to conflict and war. They've fled from Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Syria. Most of them have stayed in this region. There are, just looking at Syria alone, something on the order of 1.4 million Syrians in Jordan, 1.5 million in Lebanon. In Turkey, considering all refugees, 3.6 million people in Turkey. Literally half of Syria's population is either internally displaced or externally displaced and has left the country. And 1 million or 1.5 million refugees have ended up in Europe. But we know from experience and from talking to our colleagues that refugees, displaced scientists from this region have gone as far away as Malaysia and South Africa and Brazil, the United States and Canada. The images that emerge from this migration are often simplistic and troubling. There's a negativity. There is a simplistic way of looking at the flow of migrants from this region. It's as if there's a single monolithic mass. And in the US, where I'm from, sometimes in Europe, the monolithic mass is presented as something ominous or something troubling that we should be worried about. And that's clearly expressed in political discourse and in political results in countries like the United States and in some countries in Europe. It's a time of fear of immigrants and a time of fear playing out in our politics. I'm the Public Information Officer at the World Academy of Sciences. My name is Edward Lempinen, and I'm based in Italy. And about a year ago, give or take, I met a young man from Afghanistan. And I met him in a casual setting, and because I deal often with scientists from the developing world, I was very interested in him, and so I said, well, how did you get here to Italy? And he said, well, they attempted to assassinate me. I was the head of an aid program in Afghanistan, and there was an effort to assassinate me, which I survived. However, they killed my brother, and they hurt some of my friends, and people were disappearing from my community and under grave risk. And so my parents and my family decided that even though I was essential to the support of the family, I had to go so that I would survive. And at that moment, for me personally, the abstraction of displaced scientists and migrants from the area of conflict no longer was an abstraction. It became a very real and very powerful human phenomenon standing before me in the person of this very kind and very thoughtful young man. For TWAS as a scientific institution, and for many of our partners, this is a tremendous concern. We know that the scientists who are still in the region and those that have left are crucial to the region, crucial to the future of the region. If you think of Syria, the Syrian government itself, or the medical association, estimated a few years ago that half of Syria's doctors had left. Someday, we anticipate, peace will come to Syria, but if there are only half the doctors, and if you extrapolate only half the engineers, and only half of the public health officials, and only half of the faculty in scientific fields in Syrian universities, which have been so excellent, really, those universities, then what happens to the redevelopment and the rebirth of Syria? So it's a tremendous concern of TWAS to be aware of their needs, be aware of their existence, to provide support, and most of all, to be aware of their humanity, to be aware of a scientific story that's unfolding now, but also to be aware of a human story that really flows against the stereotype. And this is the orientation that has informed the film that we have just introduced here at the World Science Forum last night. It will show again this evening at 6:15. It's called Science in Exile, and I would like to show you an extract of it now.
Syria is located there. It's behind these mountains. It's a few kilometers between you and your country. You can't see it, but you feel it. But you cannot go there.
I never went back to Mosul after 2003. I finished my bachelor in Mosul, where the war with ISIS was, and I was very lucky because we were the last group that went out of the city, but then everything collapsed. Most of my friends have left Iraq now. Even those scientists who are still in Iraq now, they plan to leave as soon as possible. There was always assassination of scientists, and actually no one knew what is happening. Every week there is a scientist who is assassinated, and one of my friends was shot down and killed in Mosul.
I'm from Yemen, from a governorate called Taiz. Because of the war, everything is stopped. Our faculty has changed to the place of armies. If you say something, you will find yourself in a very bad situation. You cannot express about your feeling, so you will find yourself very weak. We are like an academic people, so if we talk, you will be disappeared. In my faculty, few people, they are disappeared. We don't know anything about them. So because of that, I decided just to go outside.
In the area where we lived in Syria, near Damascus, you could easily hear bombings during the night.
We were all figures at that time, numbers. Regardless of your position, whether you are a professor or you are a simple employee in a factory.
Whenever you cross a checkpoint, you have to say something good about the regime to show that you are loyal. Whenever you are in any context that's public, that you don't trust with whom you're talking, revealing your own opinion was a kind you're risking your life.
Anyone who was saying anything that's different from the government media would be arrested, would be tortured.
It wasn't always safe anyway, but it's what I'm gonna do here.
About 30 to 40% of the scholars we rescue are in the sciences or the medical professions. And it's a higher number than we thought, but it's partly because the scientists are the most respected people in a community, and a terrorist organization or a particular political party of a repressive government says if we can intimidate the scholar, the leading mathematician, the leading chemist, the leading biologist, we can silence a whole community. And the same with rescuing a medical professor. If we can intimidate that professor, if we can assassinate that professor, then the clinic they run closes, and thousands of people who depend on the clinic for help are also denied this help. So scientists become targets much more often than you would normally expect.
As I say, this film will show tonight at 6:15 in the cinema room upstairs on the second floor, and also tomorrow at 12:20 in the cinema room. Last March, TWAS, working with partners in our region in Italy and with support from the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, we staged a workshop that brought together 50 people roughly from 19 or 20 countries in the north, in the south, to look at the issues related to refugee and displaced scientists. We have encountered some of these colleagues in our work, but we felt the need to understand the situation more clearly, more deeply. What we discovered in this workshop, which was really excellent, was that there are a number of organizations in the region here, in the US, in Europe, who are doing really good work to support the scientists at risk. However, the need is so great and so significant and really so complex that there are a number of issues for us and for our partners and our growing networks in this field to continue to focus on and to continue to try and have an impact. So we're very lucky today to have an excellent panel of experts to talk to us about their experiences, their knowledge, and their work in this field. First of all, we have Nicole Laghisa, documentary filmmaker from Italy. We have Saja Al-Zubi, a Syrian social scientist, a former TWAS and ICARDA research fellow who's recently been working in the Syrian refugee camps in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. Celine Taminian of Jordan, special advisor for the Middle East and North Africa region for the Scholar Rescue Fund. Mustafa Jazar, who's in the movie, but he just wasn't in this extract, the founder and president of the Lebanese Association for Scientific Research, LASER, also long ago, I believe, a recipient of some TWAS funding. And Flavia Schlegel, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences at UNESCO. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us today. I think it might be best if, at this point, if we take a seat on the panel and Nicole will make a presentation.
No, I speak. So, hello everybody. My name is Nicole Laghisa. I'm a filmmaker and I prepared a lot of things to say, but I think I will go as it comes because I'm not used to this kind of meetings, and I think it's important to start from the end, like saying that the main goal of this documentary, which is 35 minutes, so it's long but not too much, and I hope you will go to see it. The first goal was, since the beginning, trying to make a change, trying to involve people who can decide, but even normal audience, trying to make them understand that in war zones there are scientists, and that these scientists have great impact on their societies, and they need to be helped to go on doing research. and one day maybe they will be back. So all the knowledge they can get in our safer world will be useful to rebuild their countries. So the goal was trying to create awareness, and since the beginning, since I was proposed to realize a documentary on this subject, I thought together, and it was an idea shared with the producer, to us and Ed Lempinen, to talk about people and to let people talk. So since the beginning, the idea was not to create a third voice, a voiceover, which knows everything, but to let people talk and try to make them be as sincere as they can. And this seems a simple thing, but it's not. First, because these scientists are at risk, really, so they have problems even in talking. And second, generally you are shy in front of a camera, and you tend not to be yourself, but you have like a character you are showing off, but it's not your true yourself. And so since the beginning, the idea was to spend time with these people once we found the right persons, and to make them trust us. And I filmed alone, almost all alone, with sometimes with a colleague who is the editor of the documentary, trying to be very light and very close to the subjects, to the characters. The work of research to find the protagonists, which are four scientists, was very long thing. The whole production took 7 months since the first time we talked until the end. So it's a very short time to do research, to film, and to edit. And we spend most of the time doing research, because to find the right persons was the first thing. And trying to create differentiation even in the area of study and research, men and women, the area of where they were coming from. So we wanted Yemen, Iraq, and Syria mostly, and even trying to find people in a different stage of integration. So you will see, I hope you will go tonight to see the documentary, that all the protagonists have different stages. So one is a successful case, so someone who was able to find his own path in our system, and one day he will be back to Syria, but now he's a successful scientist in an international organization. And there is, on the other hand, someone who is still looking for a position and living a very difficult situation, because not being recognized and living in uncertainty and not knowing what is your future is very difficult for everybody, but for an academic person, I think it's even more, because there is a lot behind, a lot of effort. And what could I say more? I think that the main goal, personal goal, was even trying to do something which talks to the soul of people, not only to the mind, because at the end we are all human beings, and I wanted the protagonist to be able to connect to everyone. And even if there are even facilitators and experts which talk in the documentary, the idea was even to try to connect to them and not only let them talk as experts, but trying to make them talk about the motivation they have in doing what they do. I hope it's a drop in the bucket, as one protagonist says, but I hope it will be useful, and the distribution of this documentary will be the most important thing. Now the baby's born, and we have to make him grow, and I hope that everybody who is interested in this story will help us diffuse it, creating possibilities to screen it and create events to talk about it. And as I saw yesterday at the screening, it was the first time we screened it, so the first time we had comments from someone who was external to this project. I realized it raises a lot of questions, and this is a very good thing. And I think you can have questions after, and I will answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. We'll now hear from Sajal Al-Zubi. As I said before, a Syrian social scientist, displaced scientist currently in Lebanon, a former TWAS and ICARDA research fellow. Sajal, thanks.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Sajal Al-Zubi. I'm from Syria. Everyone here, I'm sure that you know about Syrian war. With an unmeasurable loss of lives and property. This war caused the largest humanitarian and refugee crisis since the World War II and created geopolitical challenges, even shaking the political system of mature democracies in Western powers. The major losers of this war are the civilian, innocent civilian Syrians, men, women, and children, who lost their lives, family members, their homes, their cities, and even their livelihoods. One major consequence of the war is the birth of ISIS, which formed a global terrorist force, claimed caliphate, rule over large parts of Iraq and Syria, and challenged the regional and the global order. This terrorist group created more killing and caused much suffering of civilians. I have encountered firsthand myself the chaos and danger created by this war. In March 2015, as a researcher in General Commission for Scientific Agriculture Research based in Damascus, I traveled by public bus to Aleppo to defend my PhD thesis. The bus took a route that the government considered the way safe, but somewhere midway between Damascus and Aleppo, an armed gang tried to stop the bus. Then, after the driver speeded up without stopping, they fired the bus. Fortunately, no one got hurt, but this was the most terrifying experience that I have ever seen. However, was not only it was one of many incidents I have experienced. Then, as Damascus became more dangerous, I decided to seek for opportunity to get out while maintaining my profession practice, which is not easy thing. Fortunately, it was accepted my application, its research fellowship, and ICARDA has accepted also to host me in that capacity. I'm sincerely grateful to both of these institutions. I started my TWAS research fellowship at ICARDA in Lebanon on November 2016 with a research focus on livelihood of Syrian refugees. It was winter with a very little logistic support, and I have to conduct field visits and individual interviews with refugees in the harsh winter in person with the refugees' families in the middle of the harsh winter in Bekaa Valley. I had to do the field work in winter because I had no choice to schedule it at my convenience. I was also grateful for the opportunity, and I had no reason to complain, but it was, however, tough. I'm now finalizing my report. Some of the findings include that more than 97% of the refugees in Lebanon live below the poverty line in Lebanon. So and less more than 80% have less than $1 per day. Only 24% of the children go only to informal schooling. The formal schooling is only for 4%. This is in Bekaa. However, another major issue facing the refugees is legal issues. In spite of the fact that it's common knowledge that Lebanon depends on Syrian workers before the war and now. And also that we know that it's known that many low-paying jobs Lebanese don't want to do are also done by Syrian workers. But the national policy attitude towards the Syrian refugee is not fully in the line with UNHCR standards and international agreements. And there is complete void of legal framework that provides refugees with basic protection. This means Syrian working conditions are very difficult. This legal ambiguity perhaps is because of the fact that Lebanon feels the huge Syrian refugee is an existential threat to the country. While working on my project, I have faced the same legal limbo as the Syrian refugees. Myself, the Lebanese authority also inspired that I'm research fellow at international organization, ICARDA, revoked my residence and they refused to renew it. I had to go back across the border every month to get it renewed, and it's up to my immigration officer to give me the visa or not. This was horrifying and still is horrifying with the danger of crossing the borders of Syria back and forth. Finally, I like to thank TWAS and ICARDA for supporting me. Special thanks to Edward and Nicole of TWAS for their support, and also to my supervisor Aden Hassan from ICARDA, and thank you all for your attention.
In the film, we heard the leader of the Scholar Rescue Fund and the Institute of International Education, and today we're lucky to have with us Celine Taminian, who's the Middle East special advisor for Scholar Rescue Fund. Do you have slides? Maybe better here.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about IIE Scholar Rescue Fund. Since 2002, IIE Scholar Rescue Fund has assisted 726 scholars from 58 different countries, placing them at more than 375 host partner institutions in 43 different countries around the world. The Scholar Rescue Fund is a program of the Institute of International Education, which is a New York-based nonprofit organization that focuses on international education and exchange with offices all around the world, including one in Cairo. We offer programming that benefits students and scholars from more than 175 countries. We have assisted displaced and persecuted scholars and students since the founding of the IIE, and listed here are some of IIE's initiatives over the past years. In 2002, IIE's trustees decided that, to establish a permanent program to assist persecuted and threatened scholars around the world, recognizing that this problem wasn't going away. So in 2002, the Scholar Rescue Fund was founded, and we have supported more than 725 scholars from 58 different countries, spanning the globe from Colombia to Syria to Pakistan. We support professors, senior researchers, and public intellectuals from any country and any academic field around the world who are facing threats to their lives and careers. Okay. Threats can come from a scholar's government, basically, or from non-governmental resources. And often scholars are simply swept up in a larger crisis or conflict, such as what we're seeing today with Yemeni and Syrian scholars, unfortunately. How do we help? The Scholar Rescue Fund arranges 1 year visiting or teaching positions at universities or research centers outside of the scholar's home institution or home country. We provide funding, and in addition to the fellowship amount, we provide support towards that position. For example, we help scholars with relocation to the host country. We also offer individual health insurance, and we support professional development opportunities for these scholars. You can see the details here in this slide. And the scholarship is renewable for a second and final year. But the renewal is not automatic, basically. They have to apply again, and once they get the second year, that would be the final year. The core of the program is, of course, the partnership between the Scholar Rescue Fund and the host institution, and listed here are the primary components of this fellowship. While on fellowship, scholars can either teach, deliver guest lectures, supervise students, work on research, continue their writing, or maybe a combination of all of these activities. And our experience has been that both the scholar and the host institution benefit from this experience. So while our program is humanitarian in nature, we found that host institutions or our partners also benefit from this program. We have partnered with more than 375 higher education institutions in 43 different countries that offer safe haven environment to scholars who are hosted there. Jordan has always been one of SRF's most safe haven countries. In fact, Jordan hosted more scholars than any other country outside of the United States, and we're very, very grateful to our Jordanian partners and host institutions. These are the 36 institutions that we work with through the Scholar Rescue Fund here in Jordan. The targeted attacks on Iraqi scholars during the war in Iraq was the first large-scale crisis that we faced at the Scholar Rescue Fund. So consequently, we created a special program that was designed to help Iraqi academics who were targeted during the crisis. And through the Iraq Scholar Rescue Project, we supported over 280 Iraqi scholars. At the core of this program was Jordan, which opened its doors and host institutions or universities to over 100 Iraqi scholars who were threatened. And it was crucial to keep these scholars in the region so that they can stay close to their families and home universities. And once the fellowships were completed, we encouraged these scholars to return to their home universities and institutions in Iraq if conditions permitted. And with the Iraq project, we started the Distance Learning Initiative. This initiative aimed to offer our Iraqi academics the opportunity to contribute their knowledge and expertise to the Iraqi higher education system through lecture tours in Iraq, through filmed lectures that were generally filmed here in Jordan, and through the live lectures project, which are delivered from the Princess Sumaya University for Technology here in Jordan. The live lectures project still continues through the global program, and we're still offering our grantees and alumni the opportunity to deliver these live lectures to students and faculty in Iraq. Increasingly, we're looking beyond the institution to institution partnership to develop collaborations with governments as well. So we're seeking models that support safe haven countries that can host larger numbers of scholars. We have established relationships and partnerships with governments and governmental agencies in different countries such as Germany, France, Norway, Finland, and the United States. Here in Jordan, through the extensive and committed efforts of His Royal Highness Prince Hassan, Princess Sumaya, and Princess Ghida, along with our Jordanian partners and universities, more persecuted Iraqi scholars have found safe haven in Jordan than any other country. In fact, the Jordanian institutions have hosted over 100 Iraqi scholars and right now more than 15 Syrian scholars. Despite this, we're still seeking the support of the Jordanian government to overcome some of the challenges that our scholars face here in Jordan. Particularly, to mention some of that would be the entry permit, their ability to come to the country, and legal documentation once they're here, such as the work permit or the residency permit, and their ability to reunite with their families here in Jordan. Finally, we work with many global partners in this work, and listed here are some of the organizations that we work with. Thank you, and if you have any questions, you can contact us at this email address, and you may also visit our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celine. One point we haven't really raised here today is the fact that not only are working scientists at risk, forced to leave a conflict zone, but this affects science students as well. Whether as undergraduates, even at the high school level, these men and women, young men and women, can be essential to the future of their countries and have skills and capacities that are at risk of withering away without the proper support. So we'll now talk to Mustafa Jazar, who's the founder and president of the Lebanese Association for Scientific Research, who's working very much with students in this region. Mustafa, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you, Edward, for the job. I will try, I'm a mathematician, so it shows in the numbers. So I'm gonna torture you with some numbers. First of all, a few words about LASER, which is the Lebanese Association for Scientific Research. 10 years ago, with some friends in Tripoli in Lebanon, we decided to create a body to support researchers. We're celebrating this year 1,000 grantee students, 350 exchange and mobility of scholars, both from Lebanon to outside and from outside to Lebanon, and 4,500 trainees. In 2013, I was in visit in Kuwait, so I'm mainly the fundraiser for LASER. So I travel a lot trying to get funds in order to pay, to support all of this work. And I was reading newspapers, and I was doing some calculations. At that stage, we had 400,000 refugees, Syrian refugees in Lebanon. So this was exactly in February 2013, I was in Kuwait, and I had a meeting with the general director of the Zakat House. Zakat House is a governmental agency, very wealthy people. I'm fundraiser, so I have to be well prepared. I have to have good ideas, right? So in the taxi, I was doing some calculations. What is the percentage of 1824 in Syria? And what is probably the enrollment rate? So I did some phone calls, and I decided that it should be something like 15,000. I called the director of the Ministry of Higher Education in Lebanon, who's a friend of me. He told me probably it's 10,000, something like that. So I said, I found a good idea. We're going to support Syrian refugees. It started like that. So I'm a hunter. I'm a fund hunter. I found an opportunity, and I got the fund, and we started it. But when we started doing real research about the reality, it's way much catastrophic than this. What I'm showing here, there is a mistake in this number. It's 10,500. So in 2014, which is the academic year 13-14, it was 10,500. And the last academic year, it was 5,500. It's strictly decreasing, the curve. So we're trying to understand why. So as Edward said, for this program, we're focusing on the young Syrian that are in Lebanon. And our model is to keep them in Lebanon. You know by now, we have 1 million registered refugees and 500,000 unregistered refugees. We have 1.5 million. Our idea is we want to keep these people in the country to educate them. Otherwise, we will have plenty of problems. We already have plenty of problems inside the refugees community, but also between the host and the refugees community. So we started this Syrian refugees scholarships at the university level, and we will be celebrating very soon 200 graduates in Lebanon, Syrian refugees. And this year, Word is here. So Word is one of our success story. She's one of our graduate students, and now she's working for Laser as student services manager. I think that we have 470 graduate students. I'm gonna give you for free the secret of our model. We work at a very low budget. I mean, the total turnover of Laser is 1.5 million for the past 5 years. And for this project is around $800,000. Our secret is strong partnership with local universities that provide us not only a huge discount, like 75% of discount on the fees, but also a lot of facilities. One of the main challenges that we faced 4 years ago is residency equivalency for these poor people. You fled your country in a war. You don't even think about your baccalaureate or your diploma. Very often you don't even have an ID or a passport. You came to the country. You cannot have a residency. In Lebanon, you have to have an equivalency of your diploma, baccalaureate or BS or BA. And in order to have the equivalency, you have to have a residency. There is a way out, is to be registered as a student. So Saja tried to do this. Try to register as a student in political sciences, for example, and you will get the residency easily. We can help you in this. So with our partner universities, we will deliver the student a paper saying that he will be registered. With this, you will get a non-permanent residency for 3 months. And with this, you'll get the equivalency, and then you go back to the university, you will be registered, and then you get the permanent residency. So you have to break it somewhere. Another challenge, very important challenge, was the English language proficiency. In Lebanon, almost everything is in English. You know that in Lebanon you can buy 1 kilo of apple and paying in dollars. You don't need to have local currency, okay? So this is very specific to Lebanon. So you can go in the street, you'll see someone, hi, ça va, كيفك اليوم? 3 languages, French, English, and Lebanese. Well, since grade 1 to the university, everything is taught in English or French, except Arabic language. God, alhamdulillah. Thank you, God. So it was a huge problem. So we tried. We had very good relationship with teachers in Cambridge that came to Lebanon. We only paid a few amount, few cents for this. They did a survey. They tailored a curriculum and books for English proficiencies. We tried it the first year, it was a failure. I'm courageous enough to say we failed at this. We repeated the second time, it was better. And since then, we do every year an intense summer school, which is an immersive experience of English language. And at the end, it is done in campus at the universities, inside the classes. So these students will have friends, will have mentors. They are not afraid of the campus. They are not afraid of the bâtiment, of the buildings, etc. So we are in the 5th year. And as a mathematician, again, I always observe numbers. So for the first 2 years, we used to have like 3,000 applicants. Just to give you an example, in Lebanon, among 1.5 million, we have like 150,000 1824. 150,000. Based on the last enrollment rate back in Syria before the war, it was 26%. So we should have like 30 to 35,000 Syrian students. We only have 5,500. So observing the applicants, the number of applicants that you have, believe me, we have an online platform that is very, very easy to use, friendly, all in Arabic. You don't need to upload any document, otherwise it's going to fail. The infrastructure in Lebanon is very bad. 3G is very bad, right? You tried it, right? So it's very easy. This year, we only received 700 applicants. And I always keep an eye about the number of applicants that are in the Lebanese official baccalaureate. This year we had, it was the biggest number since ever, 50 only. Among these 50, 15 passed the baccalaureate. This is explained, could be explained in these 2 curves. So currently, last year, exactly we have 3,341 only. So we're talking about 1.4%, which is the enrollment rate of the secondary level, which is 15 to 18. This is a catastrophe. We are facing the lost generation now. And even the other numbers, the 63% is a fraud number. Allow me to say this. Currently, I'm the advisor of the Refugees Minister in Lebanon, so it gives me some power to go into schools. What's happening in Lebanon, there is a lot of corruption. So inside the regular, the schools, the regular schools, the public schools, you will seek to put a maximum number of registered students. So you will have a virtual classes. So you will have money to the teachers that are not teaching, and you will put the money in your pocket or part of the money in your pocket. It's 30% and not 70%. UNICEF is paying $350 million for teaching the kids in public schools. The real cost is $5,073 per kid in the public schools, which is a crime. This is a real crime. So we're facing this, and very soon the 3.6% in Lebanon will vanish. So this is the situation.
We're very honored to have with us this morning Flavia Schlegel, Assistant Director General, UNESCO Natural Sciences. Thank you so much, Flavia.
Yeah, thank you, Edward, and I'd like to thank UNESCO twice for organizing this, I think, very important session, and I think both timely but also regionally, I think really in the right spot here also in Jordan now, and we heard the numbers hosting many refugees here. A large part of the population are refugees. And I mean, we heard a few of the items raised, and I'd like to thank Nicole for giving the scientists the voice to speak about this, but I would also like to thank the scientists lending their voice, making us hear what you have to say. And I also would like to thank Celine and organizations like the Scholar Rescue Fund, which really tries to support here in these very difficult situations. Now, coming from UNESCO, you might have heard about our programs on the protection of cultural heritage. You might have heard about Palmyra, or also earlier on when the Buddha statues in Banyan were destroyed. There is a strong program now at UNESCO, supported by all its member states, which actually also led to a resolution of the Security Council of the UN to protect this cultural heritage, which actually is obviously specifically aimed at by terrorists to destroy the identity of a people. And so over the last, I joined UNESCO 3 years ago, and over the last 2 years I was thinking with colleagues, well, yes, there is cultural heritage, but part of this cultural heritage is also knowledge, and part of this knowledge is also science. So where is actually here the protection of the scientific heritage? And heritage, I don't now only mean sort of like historic heritage, but also a younger generation, and then also obviously scientists themselves. And we were sort of like thinking about what is actually this scientific capital also, which we have to protect. And I'm sorry that I'm here probably a little bit technical, but what the Science at Risk initiative is really looking at is how can we actually protect the scientific capital now, particularly in times of violent conflicts, or sometimes also obviously by natural disasters. And we're looking at the scientific capital, and again it's a bit technical, at 4 levels. And one is really the human scientific capital, so it's the professors, it's the scientists, it's the students, it's the human beings. But then we also have natural scientific archives, for example, glaciers, which are melting away now due to for example, climate change. But we also have, and I think you mentioned it as well, we have built scientific infrastructures like universities or libraries or so on, which are being destroyed right now, also very close to the place we are in right now. And then there is also scientific information in itself, which has to protect it as well. So just give you an overview of when we look at the scientific capital now in our debates at UNESCO, this is more or less what we're talking about. But I think there is a clear priority here is on the human scientific capital. How can we actually try to protect or safeguard or support scientists which now have to flee from a region of violent conflicts? And we started looking around because At UNESCO, we don't have the program really. We didn't have one, and we were looking around. And so, obviously, one partner we looked at the European Commission, and I'm very happy to also have Vladimir Susha here, responsible for the Joint Research Center at the Europe Commission, is also here in the room. Very much for the attention you're also giving here to this topic. The European Commission has initiatives like Science for Refugees or the Euraccess portal. Then we have national initiatives like the Philipp Schwarz initiative in Germany. We have PAUSE, which is a rather new program in France. And then we have Scholars at Risk or the Scholar Rescue Fund, as Celine was talking about, which I actually got to know when I was visiting them in the US, because we were looking around who is actually already working on these issues, and what are the challenges, and where is there a need also for better coordination. And then obviously we have national or regional initiatives, as just Laser, as just Mustafa talked about. So what are actually what UNESCO would like to commit to? I think on one hand, we really have to raise more and more awareness of the global threat to this human scientific capital. As I said, I think when it comes to the overall human toll, when it comes to the toll on cultural heritage, I think we're doing rather well, but when it really comes to this very specific item, I think we could do a little bit more. I think it's also very important that we have to draw attention and to promote existing initiatives so that the refugees actually know where to go to, that member states, they know that they have an organization which is taking care of these issues. I think there is also a bit of a need for support and facilitation of coordination of these initiatives. They might, when you look at the whole continuum of the time a refugee might go through, from the time leaving a country, going to another country, finding hopefully a legal status, finding hopefully a place to stay and to work, and then maybe at some point in time even go back to the original country where they came from. I mean, there are very different stages in that time. The organizations existing do offer different services, and I think it would be important to somewhat interlink them so that we could more or less offer the whole continuum or a full service. I think there is also, and I guess this is what we can offer, UNESCO has science centers. We have chairs. We have about 700 academic chairs around the world. We have about 200 science centers around the world. They actually span the whole map, so they could also be hosting institutions. They could be supporting scientists to people fleeing from their countries. And I think there is also a need to somewhat compile best practices or to exchange lessons learned. And I would like here to congratulate also UNESCO Trois in Trieste for the workshop you had in May, because I think the paper that came out there is a very good paper document, just showing sort of like a summary of the issues which would have to be tackled if we want to much better support scientists who become refugees. And these are just a few steps. So I just mentioned the workshop in March. We had a conference with all our chairs in July, and we raised this issue as well, because there are actually many scientists out there somewhere in a university, and I just simply don't have any idea that the problem exists, that there might be actually scientists in their country who are desperately looking for a place to go, a computer to use, or maybe even a laboratory to work in. And I just don't know that their need is out there, and they might actually have to offer something. I think a good moment is right now at the World Science Forum here, and I'd like to thank also the organizers to take up this issue. There are a few member states at UNESCO who might bring the topic also to the attention of the executive board. We had just a year and a half ago an intervention by Oman and by Libya on the topic, really also raising the awareness in our member states that there is an issue and that we should support particularly also the Arab region in somewhat tackling that issue. And there are obviously also other regional and global events where this could happen. Why are we talking about this? And again, from a UNESCO perspective, and it's just today that the General Conference of UNESCO is in the final debates on the update of the 1974 recommendations for the status of scientists. And if it's approved, this update, we have two additional points. One is really also to protect the scientific infrastructure, and the other one is really to be much more proactive on the protection of human rights when we talk about scientists. And I think these are very true, and I just, that's why I was on my phone, because I wanted to get the latest news, whether it had already approved, yes or no, so I'm still waiting for that. But why is that so? I think at the very end, we're really looking now from a UNESCO perspective. Obviously, we would like to be able to improve the situation of a single scientist. But this very much depends on the legal framework. So what is the legal framework of any given country for immigration? What is the legal status of a refugee? Does a refugee really has the opportunity to work? Is there a permission for work, which might be limited in time, but which gives the right to work? How are the hosting organizations being supported? I see Thierry Courvoisier from University in Geneva. They're actually hosting a program as well, and they're actually complaining that the immigration authorities had really to be somewhat convinced that they too take a particular care now of these scientists who actually get an opportunity to work, but they don't have a work permission. So how do you handle this issue that you actually have a place to work, but you're actually not legally allowed to work there, and you don't want to threaten your immigration or refugee status? So I mean, there are really very many issues which you would like to figure out. And I think with this, we really would like to raise the awareness so that from this science at risk, there is also a cooperation potential to bringing these scientists together, also to make sure that there is an exchange between these very two different realities, where some scientists might come from a country in Libya or Syria to go to another one in Europe or in North America. I think there is also some kind of exchange to do, and I think there is a cooperation potential. And with this, I'm ready, obviously, ready to respond to your questions. Please join that journey as it is in the film title explained. I think we have a responsibility to support each other, and I think there is a responsibility in the scientific community to support scientists who are refugees, and I think there is also a responsibility to share our freedom with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavia. Very interesting presentation. Thank you. We have about a half hour left, and I'm going to open the floor to questions in 1 second. But I want to mention a couple of people who are not on the panel. Thank you. But I feel obligated to mention. One is Ahmad Sadadin, a Syrian economist who was going to be here on the panel. He ran into some scheduling problems and he was unable to make it. But we have learned so much from him. He's featured in the film, and we thank him sincerely. The other is Ward Al-Jassem, who's from Syria, working with Mustafa and Laser, and she's busy taking pictures. But we're really happy to have her here today. I want to open just with one question myself. I'm sorry, I definitely will come to your question. But the discussion, I'd like to hear from all of the panelists and anybody else in the room too. There's an assumption that a scientist in an area at risk is fine after they get out of that area. If you escape the war, you should be fine. But I think we're learning that, of course, the problems hardly stop after you leave the conflict zone. So I wonder if any of the panelists want to weigh in on what the challenges are for a refugee scholar, displaced scholar, after they leave the conflict zone.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Now, if we want to talk about the challenges, it's a lot. I don't know if we have time to mention about all challenges, but the main important issues is about, I mentioned in my speech, it's about residency. The residence, it's a big problem because all people need to feel stability, to be in safe and secure place, and they need scientists, they need development, and you will not find that if you don't have the residency of the country you are or you are based there. So it's the residency is the biggest problem we face. For me, I face this problem, and also there is other problems about like visa issues if you want to attend other scientific events or some or conferences or whatever, you will meet other dilemma. It's visa issue. One time I have been rewarded by UNESCO, and it was in 2013, and I couldn't get the visa. It was in Dubai, and I couldn't get visa, so they were celebrating my success, and they were staying at my home, just watching. So this is not easy. You are looking for safe and secure place, so you are looking for income source. And fortunately, or actually it's unfortunately, most of countries, they don't allow refugees to work. I don't have work permit. I get such opportunities to work, but the foreign ministry didn't give me the permit to work. So this is the most important issues, the most important challenges. I want to mention something. It's not related to me as scientist. I'm displaced scientist. I'm not a refugee scientist, but I want to mention about refugees in general. There are many issues. It's my responsibility, and I asked Edward and I asked Nicole if there's another opportunity just to show people who are in charge of this, to show them the real situation of refugees in Lebanon or wherever, just to make the images clear and how suffer they are and what's the suffers and the challenges they are suffering and they are living. Thank you.
Other panelists? Celine?
Yes, so once scholars or scientists are here, their problems are not over. Basically, there's the entry permit issue, how to get into the country. And if we get past that, say they get the visa or the entry permit, once they're here, they struggle to get the work permit or the residency permit. So there are two. Some people it depends on the nationality. For example, if they're Iraqi, they have to have a residency permit and a work permit. If they're Syrian here in Jordan, they have to have a work permit. After that, which is a lengthy process, by the way, and is not guaranteed. And afterwards, once they get their legal documentation, it's how to get their families to reunite with their families here in Jordan. And the biggest challenge would be specifically from my experience working with these scholars, would be employment post-fellowship. So say they get the fellowship for a year, and then it's renewed for another year. What do they do afterwards? Can they go back to Syria? I don't think they can in most cases. Can they work in the country? And I think the problem is similar in Lebanon and many other Arab countries. No, it's very hard to get a work permit and secure employment afterwards. So these are the challenges that many of our scholars face in the region. And that's why many seek to go to Europe or North America afterwards. But again, in the United States, there's the travel ban right now, so they're facing issues with that as well. So it's a very complicated situation, many challenges to face. once they're out of their home countries.
Yeah, I wanted to add that this is what Celine was saying is related to a bigger issue that, I mean, not only local host communities, but also governments do think about refugees as a challenge, as a problem, and never consider them as an opportunity. You know, this idea about the pie that we have to share, the less we are, better is it, which is completely wrong and stupid, by the way. I mean, the pie, we have to do this pie, and if we're a bigger number, we can do a bigger pie. So this is really related to this. So I very often seen university professors from Syria that were working as school teachers for $400 in Lebanon, which is even less the minimum wage salary in Lebanon. And so let me add to what you were saying, it's about recognition. So are they recognized as scientists or university professors? Are they accepted? And very often we see creation of tension between communities. So I remember that back in Lebanon, even I witnessed this in our department of math. We refused to hire a Syrian scientist, even he has a good CV. And the reason was, if we open that door, we Lebanese will not have any places anymore. And you know, these reasons, racist and against any rational. So this was before the war, before the 1.5 million refugees. So you can imagine how is it now in these countries.
We've heard problems with visas, problems with work permits, problems with academic documentation. There are other problems with travel in the realm of routine daily life for a scholar after they're out of the region. And if I may offer, in underscoring what Flavia said, this seems an area ripe for science diplomacy. TWAS's science diplomacy program has been intimately involved in this. It's been at the core of our organization's involvement in this. But I think that all of us in our countries could see this as an opportunity to bring scientists, diplomats, and policymakers together. That will be essential for solutions. So let's open up to the floor. She had her hand up first. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for giving me a mic. I was very eager. I wanted to thank you very much for doing that documentary, because I think this is a fantastic idea. I'm a science writer. I'm based in Cairo, and I hope we can talk later and we can bring your movie to Cairo. But we can discuss this later. I think it's, I have a few questions. And first of all, I would like to get an idea of the magnitude. We're talking about how many scientists do we know are currently being displaced from all of those conflicts you mentioned, and maybe just the ones that the documentary has focused on, if we have an idea. I would also like to know whether there are different type of threats depending on the conflicts. If there are countries where they're directly targeted, or if they're mostly swept up in the conflict. And my last question is if they are they get fellowships and scholarships to go to the US and to Europe, how can they get equivalents for their diplomas from their home country to basically be able later on to have the same level and the same position that they used to have? Thank you very much.
Does anybody want to take the question, starting with the magnitude, the numbers?
In terms of their diplomas, that's another challenge, by the way, that I failed to mention. Many are asked to get equivalency for their diplomas. And in many cases, especially nowadays for Syrians, they are faced with the challenge of either go to the Syrian embassy in Jordan to get that equivalency, which is a big, big threat. And in many cases, it's almost like going to the government and saying, here, you can arrest me right now, or just sit there and wait, basically waiting for their documentation here to be able to resume their work in the university. So there's, and many times they end up taking that risk or challenge and going back to the embassy, and sometimes just asking family members to send their documents from Syria, which is also another challenge. So it's not an easy process, very challenging, very risky sometimes, but it is what it is. They have to get the equivalency, and it has to be stamped from the embassy in Amman.
Does anybody want to take the question about the magnitude? This is a question I have too. I think the answer to how many refugee scientists, displaced scientists are there is, I don't think anybody knows. My impression is, when TWAS had the workshop in March, we developed a quick research agenda for this field, and that's one of the primary questions. The change and the shift in the migration has been so large in such a short period of time from these countries that it's everything countries can do, whether in the region or in Europe, to find people, find places to sleep and enough food and programs. The number that sticks with me, I think I cited it at the beginning of this presentation today, is that we know that about half of Syria's doctors have left the country or been displaced in the conflict. And so that's 5,000 doctors. And if you very roughly project that onto the academic community, which in Syria, if I'm not mistaken, was vibrant and excellent universities. In Lebanon is vibrant and strong universities. Well, Lebanon doesn't apply in that sense, but it's a significant number. So, but it's ripe for research.
It actually depends on where they're coming from, the timing, the crisis itself. Like I mentioned earlier in my presentation that during the war in Iraq, particularly in 2006, 2007, academics were targeted. And that's when we got a large number of applications from Iraqi scholars during that period of time. Nowadays, we see similar situation happening with Syrian scholars who are not particularly, maybe not targeted, but swept up in a larger crisis, as in the case of Yemen as well. So it depends on where they're coming from and the type of crisis or basically the region they're coming from.
Hi, Kifak Sava. This is concerning the Lebanon kind of components of the discussion. And so Lebanon, you're completely correct, there's a lot of inherent corruption and there's lots of entries to barrier, but those also apply to Lebanese people. And Lebanon's quite a small country, and whilst the number of Syrian applications to these universities has been strictly decreasing, stability hasn't been strictly increasing. Lebanon depends on a very gentle socio-economic and political structure for stability, which is slowly collapsing. And while it has one of the lowest GDP per capita in the whole of the Middle East, and with a population of 6 million, it's currently hosting an estimated 2.2 million Syrian refugees, and also 450,000 Palestinian refugees as well. So at what point does it become a question of saturation instead of a question of entry barriers?
As we all know that Lebanese people are very good at doing commerce and business since Phoenician people, 1,000 years ago. Just give me students, I can create universities and don't worry about it. Just to give you an example, so Currently, I have the exact numbers. We have 195,000 university students in Lebanon. We have 43 universities and higher education institutes with 23 full universities. Universities with total capacities. The public university is around 71,000 students. There is room. Don't worry about it. There is room for 50,000, for example. We can adapt. It's almost private sector. Private sector is very quick in adaptation, and don't worry about it. Probably saturation about concerning jobs. But during the university journey, there is no problem. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
This is quite a complicated issue, how to look after refugee scientists. In fact, looking after any refugee is a difficult process and very uncomfortable for both sides. But looking at the numbers, if I just remember your number, you gave 196,000 students in Lebanon. Okay.
At the university level?
Yeah, okay, let's say 200,000.
Yeah.
And if you have 20 to 1 student-teacher ratio, that means 1,000 faculty. So you can extrapolate from there how many would have migrated here. My estimate is that out of the 5 million refugees here in Jordan, I think maybe 2.5 to 3,000 would be academics, or maybe a little more, or scientists especially. Is the technicians, I would be worried about. Skilled workers, they're more in number, and their maintenance sustainability is a bigger issue because it's part of economics. On another side, I'm from Pakistan. I head this OIC Committee on Science and Technology Cooperation. We have a foreign faculty hiring program in Pakistan. Well, these are a maximum for 3 years. Any nationality, whether it's from Fiji or the Eskimos, anyone can apply, so long as the university is willing to accept them. And so the issues of equivalence and acceptable accreditation then comes in, but this is solvable. And lastly, the best solution is to have no refugees. And I would request, and I have lots of friends in the West, please send us your teachers, not your soldiers. Thank you.
We have time for 1 or 2 more quick questions, if anybody has any. Sir?
Thank you, all the speakers. I'm informed well, but I like to contribute to the statistic. My name is Zeki Kaya from Middle East Technical University. I'm outside the subject, but I have some statistic to share with you. As you mentioned, there are 3.6 million Syrian refugees in Turkey, legally known, and probably another 500,000 included, if you include those not registered, probably the number is about 4 million refugees. Our higher education board just released the statistic, may be useful for sharing here. 15,000 Syrian students are in Turkish universities, studying. About 750 faculties, Syrian faculties, are hired in private and state universities. But the problem is much bigger, when you look at the young population between 20 and 24, which should be in the universities, but cannot be, placed because of the language and other, requirements. And another 250,000 will be coming, which are, age smaller than 18, will be coming up as a university student soon. That the number, at the university studies age is about 500,000, 430,000. So our Minister of Education have two programs now, like the Minister of Education for Syria and Minister of Education for Turkey. Is 4 million, a lot of population to be absorbed. So just to raise the issue, how big the issue is, I just want to share these numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Professor?
The outstanding example in the United States of a university that supports scholars at risk is Harvard University. Every year, the president of Harvard writes to all the faculty saying that it's part of the obligation of an institute like Harvard to support our fellow academics who are being persecuted abroad. If you know of such a person that you would be willing to take into your department, your research group, call this number. We have money. I got a copy of that letter and showed it to the president of Stanford University. He said, Harvard does that? And he immediately gave us money to bring the first 2 scholars at risk to Stanford, and we're doing that regularly now and trying to endow a program so that we don't have to look around for money each time we have someone who's willing to take such a scholar. We have, that's right, exactly.
I mean,
yes,
you have the money,
course.
but do you have candidates? It's another issue.
Yes.
I mean, to bring the people from Syria or Iraq or anywhere to the US, it's another issue.
Well, the travel ban is a big misfortune, yes. We're very embarrassed by that.
Yes. Hello. Thank you to the panel. First of all, I particularly enjoyed the documentary at the beginning. I think that made the issue very real, and congratulations. And I'm from Ireland. It would be great if I could bring that home and show it to faculty or stream it. I would very much like to do that. That's second question, or that's a comment. My first question is the IIE fund. Is that available to any institution that we can host refugees? That's my first question. And the second one is, I noticed on the program here there was no trip to visit a refugee camp. I know Jordan is has been a wonderful recipient of refugees. I personally, coming from Ireland, would like to visit a refugee camp. I've been trying to find out how I can do that for my own knowledge and just so that I can have a real sense of the crisis at a personal level so I can speak with authority. I didn't see it on the list of places I could visit. I saw Petra, I saw Baptism Place of Christ, which I hope to go and see as well, but I would really like to see a refugee camp, and I want to know if that's possible. Thank you.
The Scholar Rescue Fund, to answer your question about IIE, the Scholar Rescue Fund is one of the programs of the Institute of International Education. We have over 250 programs, and SRF, Scholar Rescue Fund, happens to be one of those programs. And basically, scholars have to apply to our program, and they go through an extensive review of their application. We study their applications, their background. They have to first prove that there's a threat to their lives and their careers. That second, they are actually experienced researchers or professors, and they have a certain number of publications. They have to be senior researchers, let's say, or professors. And we need to see if we actually can help that person. Can we offer that kind of help? So we don't go out and just like offer fellowships to just any scholar. They apply to us, and based on these 3 criteria, we decide if we can give them the fellowships or not. If you allow me to say something about visiting the camps, the refugee camps, I believe it's not an easy process. You need to have special permits, and I guess since UNHCR is in charge of that, you will have to also probably talk to them about it. But it's not easy, even for us, like doing the work, and we offered some students, Syrian refugee students, scholarships. It wasn't easy for us to go to the camps. So it's a lengthy process. You need special permits, and I don't think it's doable at this point with this number of people attending the forum.
Come to Lebanon, it's easier.
No. Just to, even if she came to Lebanon, you know, to visit camps in Lebanon is not easy. The first day I visited the camp, next day they were asking about my details, about my names and nationality and what I want to work, what I should do, all of these things. So it's not easy, but since you get this permit, I think also there is another challenge just to get the trust of people there, because they are afraid, they are scared, they have bad experience with other people, with other agencies, and they are a little bit aware. You can get their trust, and you can see the reality, the real situation they live. So you can imagine how it is. Thank you.
If I can add something, just a little thing about the documentary. I went to refugee camp with Saja to film, and it was since the beginning like a goal even to show a little extract of the life of these people. And Saja, she is really working with them. She went in the field for months, and to get the trust of these persons is very, very difficult. It's hard job, and she trusted me because she let me come in and know the people she knew, and I really appreciate the time she gave to me. And even the other people, they want to tell their stories, but it's not easy. They don't trust, and they are very miserable, unfortunately. And so there is a small part of this in the documentary, and okay, just wanted to add this.
And you probably know that not all refugees are placed in camps. We have so many urban refugees in different villages and cities in Jordan, in Turkey, in Lebanon. So they're everywhere, in Europe, basically. So they're not all placed in refugee camps.
One last question, please.
Difficulty the refugee scientists face once they get out of their country. And you have mentioned the visas, the residence, and all the employment issues and so forth. I think one hidden challenge is the frustration that the scientists have not to practice science. I think that's the biggest hidden frustration and difficulty they have. And as time goes on, they may feel, they can't practice science anymore, and that's a big loss.
I'd like to thank all of you for coming here today, and I particularly would like to thank colleagues on the stage and colleagues who aren't here with us today, who are doing incredibly inspiring and important work. Scholar Rescue Fund, Council for At-Risk Academics, Scholars at Risk, UNESCO, LASER, ICARDA, many other colleagues. Especially I'd like to thank also the World Science Forum, who's accommodated us here today. Princess Sumaya, the staff that's put on this program has been incredibly helpful. I don't know if you could imagine how much work they've done to get us all here safely and well housed. So thank you to them. And thank you, panelists.